talking about Franz Anton Mesmer. Now, back in the 1700s, there was a disease called consumption. Now, consumption was this theory that people got sick because they had bad blood in their bodies. And the way they treated that was they would cut the person and they would bleed out the bad blood, and that would make the person become cured. Now, Mesmer, who was an Austrian physician, he didn't like the way that this was being treated. Now, he was walking down the streets of Paris one day, and he came upon this street performer. And he was doing a demonstration with magnets. And he would take these magnets and he'd move different objects on this table that he had set up. And people were amazed by this because they've never seen magnets before. This is in the 1700s. And he'd move these objects, and he said, everything has magnetism in it. Buildings, trees, humans, animals, everything has magnetism in it. And he would take his magnet, and he would walk up to somebody, and he'd say, now the magnetism in you is such that when I run this past your face, you will fall on the ground laughing. And he does that, and the person falls on the ground laughing. And he'd walk up to another person, the magnetism in you is such that when I run this past your face, you'll fall on the ground crying. And he does that, and they do it. Now, Mesmer, being a physician, he's like, wow, this is really, really cool. I wonder if this magnetism in our bodies, when it's going the wrong direction, I wonder if that's why people get sick. If we can reverse this magnetic fluid in the people's bodies, they'll become cured. So that was his theory. So Mesmer bought some magnets, and he put them into his medical practice. Now what he would do is he'd lay people on a table aligned to true north, and he'd use this crate with chicken wire around it, and he'd lay these magnets on top of it. And he'd have his volunteer on the other side, and he'd run this crate over the person's body, and he'd give suggestions. He's basically just talking to his assistant. Now watch how this person becomes cured as we run this past their face and past their ankles, and how that magnetic fluid is becoming reversed. Now he did this, and at one point he used picnic tables. He'd have picnic tables with holes drilled in them and poles running up and bottles with water and metal filings, and people would dip their hands in the water, get some metal filings and rub it on their skin, and they'd become cured because they had that expectation. Now back in these days, people believed in dragons and different things like that. And he magnetized a tree. So people would pay Mesmer, and they'd walk into his garden and touch his tree, and they would become cured because they had that belief and that expectation. Now this has a lot to do with hypnosis today, belief and expectation. We're going to cover that a little more in the DVD. Now Mesmer became so popular, he would often have up to 3,000 patients a day, and making him the most successful physician of all time. Now he became so popular that the rest of the physicians in Paris were going out of business, and they went to the king and said, hey king, we're running out of business, you need to do something. And he's like, okay, I'll handle it. So the king says, Mesmer, if you stop doing your business, I will give you 10,000 francs a year, which was like $10,000 today. And that was a lot of money back then. And Mesmer said no, he refused. He truly believed in what he was doing. Okay? He was not a con man. He really believed that these magnets were curing people. Now, the king was like, what, you're refusing me? So the king created an investigation committee, and there was a popular U.S. statesman on this investigation committee. His name is Benjamin Franklin. Now, Benjamin Franklin was serving as the U.S. ambassador to France at this time, and he was on this committee, and he began to investigate what Mesmer was doing. And as soon as he started watching Mesmer, Benjamin Franklin instantly knew more about what Mesmer was doing than Mesmer did himself. And Benjamin Franklin posted his findings in a local newspaper. He basically said, if these people are getting better, it's simply by their own imaginings. Now once this was posted, Mesmer was ridiculed, he was shunned, everybody didn't like Mesmer, and he actually died in poverty several years later. But there were some people that believed that Mesmer was onto something. Something he was doing was actually healing people.